Now we have another expert at retirement. Craig French, who started out as a minister and retired and is now a minister again. So please, Craig.
Good evening. There was once a young boy who lived in a remote mountain village. He loved living in that setting. He loved everything about it. He loved the scenery. He loved the people. He loved the lore and the tradition. He loved the music. For this village, remote as it was, had preserved these ancient traditions, carried them forth on a daily basis. He would spend his evenings out in the public square listening to the music, listening to the old stories, and every morning he would arise, and it was his job, because tradition carries forth, to take the sheep out to pasture, to take the trusty family dog with him and, well, actually to let the dog do the work, because the dog knew exactly what to do, and up the mountain they would go, the boy and the dog and the sheep. And the sheep would graze, and he would get to do what he wanted most to do, because the dog was doing everything else. What he loved to do was to practice the songs he had heard the night before, to see if he could learn them as well as they had been performed by the best musicians in town. He took with him his tamburitza, a mandolin-like long-necked lute, and he would find a secluded place and begin to strum and practice the notes and to sing along with it all day long. As time went by and the summer grew longer, they had to go further and further into the mountains to find green grass pastures. Came across one that was especially lush on one occasion, and the dogs and the sheep went plowing through to enjoy all the vegetation they found there. Well, he found his way up against the rocky cliff, where he spotted an open cave with a large rock right next to it, and he thought to himself, if I scramble up the top of that rock, I will be able to back against the wall here and rest myself and sing and perhaps have the echoes all around. And so he did just that. All morning long he played his tamburitza. He strummed it and he sang to it hour after hour until it reached midday, and he began to realize he was hungry. So he put his tamburitza down and reached for his sack with a lunch, when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, came a deep-sounding voice. "Don't stop." He grabbed his bag and his tambourine and was about to jump down and run away when the voice came again. "Please." And so, taking a chance, he sang another song. And when he finished the song, the voice inside the cave began to tell a story and wove a story from start to finish. And when that voice had completed the story, the boy sang another song and then a story that followed it. And all day long, story after song, song after story. It was a wonderful day. As the afternoon shadows grew longer, it became time for him to head back down the mountain. But the voice inside asked one more question. "Will you come again?" "Yes, I will be back tomorrow." And so all the rest of the summer, every day up the mountainside to that hidden valley with that big rock and an opening in the rock, the cave next to it, and the two of them back and forth, song and story and song and story. By late August, as the sun began to make its journey across the heavens and began to lower itself little by little, on one particular afternoon, coming close to the time of leaving that spot, as they had spent the whole day doing what they loved to do, these two unseen partners, the voice from inside the cave began to tell not just the stories that had been told all summer long, stories of adventure, stories of great knights from the past, stories of pirates and sea captains and wrecks, stories of romance, stories of great sadness and woe, stories of laughter and joy, stories of promises made and promises broken. But that day, one more story, a new story. And the voice inside began to tell its own story. And it was a story of great loneliness and great fear. Because the voice confessed that it was all alone, had no companion, no friends, no one to care for it and look after it, no one for it to care for and look after. And that afternoon sun, because it had dropped down just enough lower, threw a shaft of light for the first time into the cave far enough that as the boy looked in, something glinted, something shiny caught his eye, and he began to pay attention, and when he realized it was a large, razor-sharp talon. And the talon was connected to a huge foot, and the foot to an even bigger leg, and the leg connected to a massive body full of scales with large wings coming off the side of it, and above that a long spindly neck and a massive head with horns and smoke surrounding it. And the boy realized, of course, that the tales he had heard down in the village about long ago battles and driving off strange creatures and driving off dragons, not all had been killed off. Here was one that remained. And he reached out to feel the dragon's body. At which point the dragon threw its head up and said, "Aren't you afraid, boy, of me? I can rip you to shreds with my sharp claws." "No, I'm not afraid of you." "Well, you should be, because one breath from my mouth will incinerate you into ashes." No. For I have heard your stories, and I know your heart. And the dragon looked down at the boy and smiled back. "Will you come again?" "Yes," the boy said, "I will be back tomorrow." And all night long he tossed and turned, concerned now for this great, mysterious friend up the mountain. And it struck him early in the morning that as much as the people in the village loved their stories and loved their songs, then this new one could bring something to them and add to the riches of that village. And so that morning he delayed going back up the hillside long enough to bang on the door of the mayor's office, saying, "I have found something very special, something that will add to our life as a village, but I need you and your counselors to come make sure that you will welcome this newcomer into our midst. This is a wonderful storyteller who has so much to add to our life and has the biggest heart you could imagine." Well, the mayor was intrigued, and so he rallied all of the counselors. But there was a stipulation that the young boy put forth, saying that the storyteller was shy and fearful, so that if they agreed to follow him up the hill, when they got to the last turn, he would require them to put blindfolds on so that they would neither know exactly where they were, nor would they be able to see the stranger. They agreed. And up the mountain hillside they went, and they reached the last turn, and the blindfolds came out and were placed upon them, and he led them in by hand right up to the edge of the cave and had them all sit down on the ground in a circle. And the dragon looked out and saw that indeed they had covered their eyes, and he was ready to tell the stories. And so he told them stories of love that warmed their hearts, and stories of adventure that set their hearts pounding. Stories that made them laugh and roll in the grass. Stories that made them weep. And last but not least, he began to tell his own story. And as he told of his own loneliness and his own fears, he wept big dragon tears that rolled down his cheeks past his chin, and one of them landed smack onto the hand of the mayor, and the mayor recognized that this was an unusual volume of tear, and so carefully pulling down one side of the blindfold, took a peek. But having heard the stories, was quite willing not to run away in fear. Indeed, quite willing enough to be able to reach to the person next to him, and that person to the person next to her, and all the way around the circle, one by one, they dropped their blindfolds to behold the one who had been telling these magnificent stories. And the mayor looked up at this big head with these big sad eyes and said, "I have one question for you. We love telling stories and we love singing songs, and you would fit in so well with us. Will you come and be part of our village?" The dragon thought about all the tales he had heard over the years. Tales of the warfare between the humans in the village and the dragons who used to fill the mountains. But he had gotten to know the boy, and he trusted the boy as much as the boy trusted him. And so he said, "Yes, of course." And the mayor jumped up and said, "Then I've got one more question for you. Can we climb on, and will you fly us back down the hill one last time?" And so down the mountain they went. Boy and mare and dog and counselors and the last known dragon. And together they lived happily ever after.